There is no doubt when it comes to Undertale. Its community is still massive. It's kind of crazy just looking through YouTube, searching Undertale and finding a bunch of videos with loads of views, even now after so long since the game came out in 2015. Videos of fan-made animations, entire alternate universes, with a rich story and even fan games made about them. Those projects like Undertale, Undertoad, Clicktail, Ortale, Dusttale, and the list goes on. And then there's me, a silly cat with sunglasses wearing a cape for no reason. How can I add an original Undertale fan game where there's such a rich fanbase who made just about everything about it? And then I saw it. There's no game where you play as Sans. Well, okay then. The game will consist of different arenas, where each arena represents a location in Undertale. We will have to start at the ruins and then go to Snowdin, Waterfall, Hotlands, to the end battle until the surface. Now for the first arena, I'll make it with Pro Builder. Here is a pipe shape that has the ruins textures. I want this environment to be a bit lighter than in Undertale, so I'll add some trees and grass. In my cat roguelike game, I used procedural generation to generate the terrain, and other assets on it. This time I'll do it by hand. I'm sure it won't take long. So I placed something like 2000 grass objects and copy-pasted them all over the arena. The problem is that the arena is not flat, so 50% are below it, 40% are floating in the air, and the rest are stretched on the ground for some reason. Okay, for this, I'm using procedural generation. All I need to do is to use the piece of code I wrote for the other game I made. This looks a lot better. There's always the option to do it with a placer. Anyway, the arena won't be the only place you can go to. There's a few hidden or visible locations you can find to progress the game. One of them is Toriel's house, and the other is the starting location, which I'll talk about later. Hey, Cat from the future here. I found out that there is a small abandoned demo of a game where you play as Sans and it's called Sixbone. The game I'm making has a similar story to this, where you play as Sans in the genocide route, but my game has a different twist to it. In the story section of this video, you will see what I mean. Undertale by itself is genius. Toby Fox had a brilliant story for this game. It revolves around this main idea. Wouldn't it be nice if the monsters you battle could be befriended instead of being killed? When you first start Undertale, you get to name your character, but only later it is revealed that the main character's name is Frisk. You can play the entire game as Frisk and do the regular routes of the game, which are Pacifist route and Neutral route. These routes are enabled from the main idea of not killing the monsters, but there is another route, which is the side route, where you play as the fallen human Kara. To enable this route, you need to hunt down each monster in the starting area, ruins, and continue to the next area. This route is so weird and heartbreaking. Playing this while getting monster encounters, where it only says nobody came, the shops are abandoned, and the main characters of the game are actually afraid of you because you aren't human anymore. They are not sure what you are. It is then when you understand that the main villain of the story is actually you, the player, who decided to kill all characters in the game just to see what happens. Guys, I think murder might actually be bad. Well, the story of the game I'm making is about this exact route. What if whenever Kara fought an enemy, parts of their soul, which in Undertale are presented as hearts, stayed in that location? What if Sans, who we know is aware of her doing that run, was after her the whole time, following her until she got to the end battle? When you play as Kara in that route, Sans is nowhere to be found in most cases, other than main encounter in Snowdin and the end battle. This game will fill that gap, showing what happens to Sans when the player is killing all of the monsters in the underground. And that means that the last encounter of the game will have to be this encounter from Sans' perspective. And if you play the game, you know what happens. Interesting, isn't it? As we know, Sans is the most mysterious character of them all, as they exist in multiple times at once, and can actually teleport. In a way, Sans is the embodiment of the game itself, judging you as you play, keeping score of the things you do in the game. And that's exactly the purpose of Sans in this game. You control Sans, and your main attack is shooting laser from its companion. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to model Sans. I'm not going to buy any of these models on Sketchfab, which will make everything a lot easier. I'll have to do everything from scratch. And here I ended up with this model. A bit scuffed, but it works. Next up, we'll need to do some rigging, which means adding some bones to Sans, so it could be animated. Could use Rigify, which makes the whole process of rigging a lot easier, but this time I wanted to do it differently. So I'll place each bone separately, and it will probably take 10 minutes or so. It took 4 hours. Rigging takes forever to do right, but it's done. I have a rigged Sans model. Next up is Sans attacks. As we all know, Sans has a lot of different attacks. Sans can generate bones to attack the player, spawn a dragon skull head that shoots laser beams at the player, and finally the most interesting and cool attack. Sans can save and load the battle scene and make the player sleep in the bed they made. But I can't just give Sans all of these attacks right at the start. When you play this game, you will have to earn those powers as you go by collecting enough bones, and those bones will be scattered across the arena. The first power will be the laser beam. I modeled the skull and added that to the game. Making a laser beam seems easy enough, right? Well, maybe the particle itself, because the more I read about programming a smooth laser aiming, the more complicated it gets. Time to put my pro game dev gear on. You have to raycast a beam to the point in front of the player and then make a particle effect which looks kind of bad, and then you have to change the whole particle to something that looks better, and then learn that there's a thing called line renderer, which if you add noise to, it looks really cool, but it only shoots in 4 directions, which is kind of lame. Better thing is to make it shoot to the middle of the screen when you move the mouse. So you have to calculate the middle of the screen position, raycast a beam and convert the angles to Ural angles, because those rotation values have no relation to the inspector. And then you need to use that quaternion, which requires 4 numbers to describe a 3D space rotation, and its unities class has a method called loop rotation, and it works. So I found a model of Toriel and added texture to it, and imported the model to the game. As you know, Undertale has a conversation system, which I want to mimic and make for this game also. So I ended up making an E sign, which follows the camera, and when you press E, a dialogue appears. And you can actually speak to Toriel and look at signs. And here's another cool idea. What if the dragon skull is actually Sans' companion that talks to him about stuff in the game? The enemies in this game will be the souls that Kara left when she killed all of those monsters in the underground. So, time to model a heart. Although it's an heart, which in a regular game means healing, it will be surprising for the player to find out that those hearts can actually hurt you. Does it surprise in a good way? Who knows? Only future will tell. I'll have to make sure that the player understands that the hearts are an enemy, so I'll make it have a charge attack, and when it hits the player, its health goes down, and the screen flashes red. Also, one heart is not enough. It can be kind of cool if the hearts could reproduce. I wrote some code that makes the hearts spawn more hearts from themselves. I hope that makes sense. yeah. Toriel lives in this house, where in the game I'm making you can also get to. And I made a little game here. When you press E on the TV, guess the song name, where you need to choose the correct song each time, and the reward is of course a bone. In Undertale, the ruins have some switches puzzle that you have to solve to progress, so I did the same here. There's lots of switches scattered around with a puzzle that involves 7 load platforms, and I don't want to say too much about this, so it won't be ruined for you. I think I want to make it like a chapter-based game, where the first chapter is the ruins, and the second one is Snowding, and so on. I still have some more stuff to add to this chapter before I release it, but it's getting close to being finished. So in the next video about this, I'll add a link to download it for free. You can also subscribe so you won't miss this chapter's release. Let me know what you want me to add to this game. And here's some gameplay. Bye!